Welcome back to our Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations on topics that we find interesting. And today I'm very excited to have Alysha Gebo back for the second time. I think you are our second time guest, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I unfortunately had to miss the first time you were here. So I got to listen to the podcast, just like everybody else. And I was blown away with your ability to kind of take some difficult topics around nutrition and make them simple. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited. I'm glad you're here, and I have some questions of my own.
Absolutely.
But first, for anybody that didn't get to listen to the first podcast, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I'm very happy to be back. It was very fun. I had a lot of fun the first time. So I am Alysha. I'm the co-owner of Nurtured Nutrition. Me and Ryan own Nurtured Nutrition, which is a practice that specializes in treating disordered eating, GI conditions, and general nutrition as well. And we've been open for, what are we at now? We're at 4 years.
Wow.
We've been open for 4 years.
Wow.
So that's been a great journey. So yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
And now, you went to school for it? Where?
We went to Framingham State. So we got our undergrads in nutrition and dietetics at Framingham. And then after that degree, I went for my master's in psychology, and I focused all my studies on disordered eating. So I had that additional bit of education, which has been super helpful for counseling and understanding.
Nice. And so did you have a passion for this when you started it, or where did it come from?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I had a passion for this since probably the age of 16, kind of struggling with some of my own issues with nutrition. And it became a big part of my life. And throughout my journey with it, it has evolved. It is completely different than it was when I started. My reasons for why this is so important to me, and being able to just help other people experience like the liberation of food freedom. Like, food doesn't need to have all these rules. And I like to help people understand that because, we live in diet culture, and it's pretty challenging sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I know last time you were on, you really explained diet culture well. And I think that if you haven't listened to that one, I forget the number.
I think it's 21.
21?
Sounds right.
I only remember it because it's Ryan's number, so 21.
All right, yeah, 21. Go back and listen to that. The diet culture one was really eye-opening for me. But today, I think what I'd like to talk about is more like mind-body connection. And it was interesting to hear you just say, I didn't know that about your psychology degree. So, so I'm glad I'm asking the right person.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I want to talk about, and I think is a lot of people struggle with, is understanding like the difference between eating and fueling. We know, and I don't think many people get to this point very often nowadays. We know that if you don't eat for multiple days in a row, that you'll have fueling issues. But if you're constantly in this cycle, like most of us, where we have this particular way that we eat, like we skip breakfast and then we have a big dinner, or we skip breakfast and we have lunch and then we have dinner, or whatever we're doing constantly, I feel like we don't really ever take the time to listen to our bodies and say, is this the right way to eat for me, or is this just the way that I've been doing it forever?
Absolutely. And that's like a big piece. And I know you mentioned we just talked about diet culture last time, but you can't really separate diet culture from this issue either, because it plays a big part in this issue, where it's kind of this idea that like, I this is how I eat. But like every day is different. Like you do different things every day, and your body has this constant reservoir of changing information that is constantly communicating with you. And it's giving you real-time best information about what you need. And when you don't tune into that, you will have issues with fueling. You will not necessarily meet your needs, and you're more likely to engage in emotional eating or eating for other reasons besides hunger.
So what are some ways that I could tune into that?
So it's really kind of just, it's kind of like a mindfulness practice where you're just pausing and checking in. And I always like to go through, let's talk about hunger first, right? So we'll talk about hunger and then fullness, because both of these things are important for fueling. And the first is just really being in touch with your hunger and how your body is telling you you're hungry. And I like to kind of separate the cues into two categories. So we have early hunger cues, and then we have late hunger cues. So before I get into that, like, MJ, how do you know you're hungry? How does your body tell you you're hungry? Or how do you interpret that?
Nothing like
This is a
putting
trick
me on the
question.
spot.
Sorry.
So let's think. I guess what I would say is I don't get hungry very often. When I am hungry, I'll feel maybe a sense of like lethargy, like a kind of like I'm like more likely to kind of space out or not be focused.
Yep.
I don't feel like I very, very rarely get hungry enough where I'm like my stomach is talking to me.
Mhm.
I guess if now that I'm really thinking about it, the way I know I'm hungry is when I start to eat. I'm eating super fast, and I'm like intentionally having like the second burrito. Like I'm having like a big meal instead of like I could have just had one. Does that make sense?
You actually just hit on multiple early hunger cues. So that's actually really, really good, right?
Okay.
So like picking up on the lethargy, like fatigue, loss of focus, that's because your blood sugar is low. So when our blood sugar is low, our brain's not getting enough fuel, we're not able to pay attention. And that kind of happens. Another one is increased thoughts of food. So if you start thinking about food, that's usually not random. Now, that can be hijacked by emotional eating for sure and disordered eating. So that is a cue that is real. There are other factors there, but if you start thinking about food, like that's often a sign that you're hungry.
That one's interesting. Just real quick, as a added subtext there, people who are highly malnourished often obsess with foods. Like they go on Pinterest and they look at recipes. They watch a lot of cooking videos. It's a sign that, hey, like your brain's saying, hey, you should probably think about food because you're malnourished.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense. And for me, it's actually not the amount of food I'm thinking, not how often I'm thinking about the food. It's I start thinking about all of the foods.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, I could eat this, or I could eat that, or I could eat this. Yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely me in a nutshell. If I do a 24-hour fast or something like that, I would say I'll think about, like, usually I have it planned out because I know that that's what works best for me. But if I don't, I'm like, oh, I could have this for dinner tonight or this for dinner tonight. Yeah, that makes good sense.
The hunger you get, the more likely you are to overeat. So I like to call that slingshot hunger. So if you go too down on this tool that we use, the hunger scale, me and Ryan use this tool with our clients where you kind of rate how hungry you are. It's a tool, a very tangible, helpful tool to help you start connecting with your body. And when you get too low in the lower numbers, you will slingshot into the higher numbers. So you noticing that you're more likely to eat a larger volume, that means that you got too hungry. But the other cues that you mentioned, the loss of focus, the lethargy, those are early cues. So those are the cues we want to respond to. When we get loss of focus, lethargy, more of an empty feeling, not a pain typically in our stomach, but like an empty stomach feeling, and the increased thoughts of food. Those are kind of our early cues. When we notice them, we want to go, time to eat. We can keep our hormonal profile as good as possible if we eat at that time. If we get too hungry, and then there's a whole list of more intense, our late hunger cues, that's what leads generally to overeating.
Wow. Okay. So I found that when I eat breakfast, that I do feel my hunger cues better throughout the day.
Correct.
That's yeah?
Yes, because
Okay.
you're coming off an overnight fast and you're engaging with your hunger, right? So when you come off an overnight fast, there's different things happening and you're not as connected to your hunger. But when you do eat, you kind of reset this ability to be like, I've eaten. Your body gets the glucose, it gets the energy, it digests, and then it tells you I'm hungry again in a very like predictable way. So when I have clients because I do have clients too who will undereat not for disordered reasons, but are just low level interested in food. And that is a thing, by the way. There's a lot of people who just are not very interested in food and have trouble nourishing themselves. But if they don't eat breakfast, they like cannot get themselves to eat throughout the day. They don't feel hungry. They'll end up dizzy and nauseous and feel really sick. But that breakfast meal, it really does help you connect more fully with your body through the rest of the day.
That makes good sense.
Yeah, and there's a distinction too. Like sometimes people will say, "Well, Ryan, when I eat breakfast, now I'm just hungrier through the day."
Mm-hmm.
And I think the distinction is that you're not hormonally hungrier through the day. You're actually just, the call is not coming through a little bit more clear. So you still have the same presence of hunger hormone, essentially, but you're just able to hear it better. And so as opposed to someone who is like, doing like a long fast or something, eventually like the signal of those hormones kind of loses its power. And so you can't really hear it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not subtly, subconsciously impacting you. And this is why 95% of overeating, if not more, or binging is related to undereating throughout the days, because you may not feel those hunger cues super clear, but it's still impacting you. And then you get home at night, everything is kind of calm, and you finally have, access to food, and then you find yourself overeating because those hunger hormones have really built up.
Exactly. And those hunger hormones too, like I always like to mention, I know you've talked about ghrelin on the podcast in the past, but one of the issues with people who are dieting is they're under eating chronically. And so they have higher levels of ghrelin floating around in their body. And this makes them feel more hungry and makes them more likely to overeat. But even if they resist those impulses, when you have higher levels of ghrelin floating around in your body because you're too hungry, when you do eat, instead of your body taking all that food and going, let me utilize this for energy, let me turn it into glycogen, let me, break down the ATP, let me use this, it goes, oh, we're not being fed. Let me store more of this as fat and use some of this. So you end up with increased fat storage when you undereat chronically.
That makes total sense to me. So what would you say? I guess I have two questions. I'll try to ask them one at a time because that would make more sense for the podcast. Someone like me, all right, this is my own inner workings. I absolutely enjoy dinner. I enjoy cooking it. I enjoy making it. I enjoy sitting down. I enjoy dinner for me kind of signifies the end of my day. But then when I sit down and I eat it, I am enjoying the act of eating it. So I know I will eat. If I'm hungry, if I eat breakfast and I eat lunch and I feel good, I'll eat a big dinner. If I skip my whole day, I will eat a big dinner. How do you kind of curtail that late night dinner time overeating when it's mental?
Well, there's a lot of pieces there, right? So if there is the mental piece, and that's kind of like the restriction. So if you have undereaten during the day, mentally you're going to have a higher drive to overeat, and physically you're going to have a higher drive to overeat. So one of the most important things is eating normally during the day. I always think about it as let's keep our hormones as happy and in check as possible by eating normally during the day. There's also an emotional component that can be present with that sometimes. And a lot of times we will use eating to decompress or relax. So if we had a really stressful day and we're kind of like, oh, I could sit down to my dinner. And it's normal for that to be relaxing. I love sitting down to my dinner and enjoying it for sure. But if you kind of have this urge to eat past fullness, you're probably eating for another reason. And that's a different thing. And that's something we can talk about too, is kind of how do we distinguish between physical and emotional hunger, because they do present slightly differently, although they can feel extremely similar.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm ready.
Yes. So emotional hunger, I like to call it lightning bolt hunger. So it will be bam, I'm hungry. How regular hunger will creep up on you, as you go, I'm kind of hungry. Oh, I'm hungry now. Lightning bolt hunger slaps you in the face. I'm hungry, right? So it's a very abrupt type of call. It's also typically present with some type of emotional compulsiveness or anxiety. I often ask my clients to pay attention what you feel in your chest and in your throat, to pay attention to kind of these parts of your body, because oftentimes emotional hunger will present with some type of emotional tightness, because it's you looking for soothing in a different way. So that's another thing to check for. Also, sometimes when it comes to emotional hunger, it can be very specific of I'm looking for this thing, I want chocolate, right? Where if you're actually hungry, you will be open to eating a variety of foods. If you have one specific calling, it's more likely to be emotional. And then the last thing that we kind of use to check, I always use this one last, because of course every day is a little bit different, but the amount of time it's been since you've eaten last. If you've just eaten a good size, a dinner that you would normally eat, and 30 minutes later, you get slapped with hunger, well, it's probably emotional, right? But if it's been 2, 3, 4 hours, then you can be oh, well, it's actually been 3 hours. I have some of these other cues. Let me try eating and see what happens. And how we really suss this out and get rid of emotional eating, or I don't want to say get rid of it because it has its purposes, but reduce it from being your default, is you have to be willing to do experiments where you go, okay, I think I might be hungry. I'm not quite sure. let me try eating something and see what happens. And if cues resolve and you feel and those things kind of go away, you know it was hunger, but if you still have this persistent urge to eat past that, it was emotional.
Wow, you said one thing there that really resonated with me, and you said at the beginning where when you are physically hungry, you'll start to think about food, and specifically for me, I think about all the foods that I could eat this or that, or this would be good or that. But when I'm emotionally hungry, I'm in on the chocolate.
Yeah.
I'm in on the dessert. I'm in on the cookies. I'm like, no, I just want a bag of chips, or I just want this. I don't really care to make myself food, which I would be doing if I was physically hungry.
Yes.
That's maybe a good lesson for everybody out there.
Yeah, it's often very specific. And the reason why it's chocolate or chips is, I know Ryan, you take that one because I know that you talk about that a lot with like kind of the fat and sugar elements.
Sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, those things are, highly pleasurable, right? And so, we've talked about on the podcast, and I often bring up that, we have a couple different reasons why we eat, and none of them are wrong, right? Like we eat for fuel, we eat for satisfaction, we eat for cultural reasons, social reasons, spiritual reasons, like the cracker at church kind of thing. You're not hungry when they give you the cracker, right? But nonetheless, like, one of those reasons is satisfaction. And, it really is important for someone and to balance that, to balance this satisfaction-oriented kind of like food drive. It's very, very important. It's something that's very natural, but it easily gets to this place of being a little sketchy, a little in excess, I guess I would say. But as is true with anything pleasurable, anything pleasurable runs the risk of being in excess. Alcohol is a great example. Plenty of people navigate alcohol just fine, right? You go out, you have a couple of drinks with friends, and it's not a problem, right? But it starts to become a problem for people when it's used in excess, when it's used for reasons habitually in regards to coping. So you're having you have a stressful work day, you go home and you have a drink, not a big problem. Like you're kind of decompressing a little bit, and that's okay. But is it okay if it actually becomes every day? If that becomes twice a week, then 3 times a week, then 4 times a week, and then every time you're feeling stressed, this is what you do. And obviously the answer is no, but the same thing is true with food, is that food is very powerful, maybe not drug-like, and this is an important distinction, it's not drug-like. We get this like, dopaminergic response, but it's nowhere near like, meth or something, right? And so it's easier to manage, and that's the distinction. People, will call it like food addiction. It's not food addiction because it's not a drug. It doesn't have the same, 1,000% increase in dopamine that like meth would. And so, just being really careful about that. But yeah, I mean, we use it to cope. It's just one of those things where if it's your only coping strategy, if you lack other areas that also help you cope, such as meditation, journaling, breathing, talking with friends, playing a game, engaging in hobbies, those are important areas. So it happens to be the case, and this is something that we find often with disordered eating or just like, challenged eating habits in general. When the person gets more hobbies, they balance out their lives, they do better. It's just like it's 2 peas in a pod.
That makes good sense too.
Yeah. Absolutely. I always tell them, like, I know I'm your dietitian. We're talking about food. I'm like, but we're going to be talking about like knitting and painting. And, I need you to find other things that bring you that joy, something to look forward to at the end of the day. Because for a lot of people, disordered eating or no, it's like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have my chocolate at the end of the day. And like, they're looking forward to that because it's pleasurable. It is. But another distinction is that food tastes better when you are hungry. This is actually true. Your taste buds down-regulate when you are full. The food literally does not taste as good. Now that I said that, pay attention next time to see what happens, because it literally doesn't. And then, so I kind of ask myself sometimes, like, oh, I kind of want some chocolate. Oh, am I hungry? Oh, I'm not really hungry. I'm like, you know what? Do I want second-rate chocolate? Or do I want some yummy chocolate? I'm going to wait an hour and I'm going to reevaluate because I want my chocolate to actually hit. Like, because when I'm hungry, it will. So it's kind of figuring out that fullness element. And there's definitely a lot of things on that as well to kind of figure out, well, how do I know when to stop eating?
Yeah. So that takes me to so I had previous question.
Yes.
Was well, I want to talk about portion size, but my previous question was, what do you say to the people that are like, yeah, whatever. I don't eat breakfast. This is just who I am. I don't eat breakfast. I have a coffee in the morning, and then I'm not hungry until, some people say, all the way till dinner or lunch or dinner. Like that's just what I do. That's just who I am. That's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, people do say that to me. And then I will encourage them to check in with cues that they may not be relating to hunger, that mean hunger, that are some of the later cues. Because people who typically fast like that have a very poor connection with stomach hunger specifically. So the hunger that our society generally thinks of as stomach hunger is like the main cue, is really not present as much in those people. So I'm asking them, are you feeling dizzy? Are you feeling very tired? Are you feeling nauseous? Do you have a headache? Do you kind of stand up sometimes and see little sparklies? Like there's all these other things that people might attribute a headache to, I'm stressed or tired, or someone might attribute nausea to my stomach is upset. But in reality, that might be your body's cry for, I have too much acid in my stomach because you haven't fed me. Now I'm nauseous. Please put some food in here to absorb this acid. So I'll help them connect with these deeper cues, because almost every single time that I go into that conversation, eventually they'll be like, yeah, I was actually pretty dizzy today. I'm like, okay, well, that was hunger though. Like we need to make that connection that dizziness was hunger. So I need you to eat something next time that happens. And within 15 minutes, I need you to assess, did the dizziness reduce or go away? Because if it did, we have concrete, indisputable evidence that dizziness was hunger. And now we can build that connection.
So is the same thing for like that afternoon crash? People talk about all the time, like, oh, I have that 2:00 crash or whatever. Is that kind of the same?
Right.
It can be. Absolutely. Like, I mean, I feel like I used to have I don't feel like I have that anymore, right? Because I'm more in tune. So yeah, the afternoon crash, sometimes too, depending on what you eat for lunch. Like if you eat something that takes a bit of effort to digest, like when you digest, the blood rushes to your stomach and your digestive system, which then reduces blood in the rest of your body, which can make you tired. Also, depending on what you ate, it could be like a blood sugar spike or crash, so some of those different things.
Another good point to that piece of the puzzle is that a lot of that stomachy hunger is oriented to protein. So, we feel that in response to ghrelin, the major hunger hormone, which is stimulated when we don't have enough amino acids in the GI tract. And so that actually releases from the stomach and then communicates up to the brain. So, someone could be eating plenty of protein, getting in enough for their needs, but not necessarily eating enough glucose to promote carbohydrates to promote like adequate focus and learning and attunement. And this is actually, and it's not a theory either. It's like we know that neurons are attuned to glucose, and when blood sugar is below what your normal may be, your normal kind of like homeostasis, you're going to feel lack of focus. You're going to have lacking of cognitive clarity, and you're not going to be able to put in the same amount of effort that you normally would. And there's plenty of studies that show this. They have people, who are well fed with glucose versus people who are underfed, and they find that every time the people who are underfed just do worse. They give up on their tasks that they give them to do. They quit. They can't think clearly, and so you may not notice this. This is, by virtue of lack of cognitive clarity, you're not even noticing your lack of cognitive clarity, which is the scary part. And so that's why it's really important, like Alysha's saying, making sure that you have some essence of nutrients coming into the day. But if for whatever reason, and I share this with people, like some people just don't like breakfast. It's just kind of like is what it is. But just try to notice. And if there are signs that you're getting, hey, I'm irritable, or I can't focus, or there's little sparklies or whatever, that's your cue, and you're ignoring it.
The irritable one's big too. I missed that. Thank you for mentioning that. Mood changes are huge.
Hangry
is real. Like, I mean, I know it's like, oh, hangry. That's like legit. Like irritability is a huge hunger cue. And that is one that people do notice. So it's just like helping people make that connection. And I have yet to run into somebody who does that, not eating all day, when I ask them those questions, maybe a couple times. Sometimes, no, it's really like this. And I'll ask them, I'm like, okay, you're dizzy. We know what this means, And so nobody doesn't experience these cues when they go a long time without eating. They just might not know what their body is telling them.
Sure. And I think that in the same way that it takes time to learn about your body, the longer you go without learning about it, the better you are at avoiding knowing about it.
Mm-hmm.
that's for sure.
Yeah, they're just like, oh, I'm just a sick person. I'm like, but that it doesn't have to. We can try some different things. It doesn't have to be that way. You're not going to always feel run down and sick if we nourish differently.
So thank you. Now I'm interested in portion size. So, I mean, I don't really eat off of a box very often, but like usually when I do, it's because it's a snack that I'm overeating. But like those portion sizes, like, how do you tell me what we should do about portion sizes? Not just our own portion sizes, but like in relationship to like what the box says or what the people say.
For sure. So that question is a hard question to answer because it's extremely variable across people. Like, so this is one of those things where we have to do kind of some experiments with to kind of find what portions work for you and also in what situations. So that's why that hunger scale that we use. So instead of kind of being like, we're going to eat a cup of XYZ at each meal, kind of checking in.
What is the hunger scale?
The hunger scale. Oh, yes. So the hunger scale is basically a tool that it's 10 numbers. It goes from 1 to 10. 1 is you are absolutely starving. You would eat anything. 10 is you're so full that you can't fit another bite of food. I always say we never want to be a 1 or a 10. Those are horrible. Both of them are horrible. Between 4 and 7 is shaded in green. And this is where we want to chill all day. If we can hang out between 4 and 7 all day, we're going to be most connected with our body, most energized, and our hormones are going to be in the best profile possible. So we want to be able to kind of make it into the green zone. So it's less about the exact portion and more about connecting with yourself while you are eating. So you might portion out like a cup of rice, a cup of vegetables, and a piece of chicken. And, might be like, that's generally a good portion for me. But if you're eating and all of a sudden 3/4 of the way through, you're feeling those feelings of satiation, meaning like the food is starting to taste not as good. You're becoming a bit less interested in it. Now, those things are also manipulated by emotional eating. So that's the kind of it is a little bit different sometimes when we have emotional eating. But if you're noticing you're getting full, then we stop. If you finish the plate and you're still hungry, you kind of ask yourself like, what do I feel like I'm needing? A lot of times, if we're still hungry after a meal that's a pretty decent size, it's because we didn't eat enough fat. Because fat is the most satiating nutrient. So you might kind of add a little scoop of peanut butter and move along with your day. So the exact portions, that's like an individual basis. But as related to the ones on the box are political. They want the back to look as good as possible. So they pick a portion that, I'm not going to eat 9 crisps. Like, that's ridiculous, So
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Right,
so don't feel like those portions, they're not based in much, right? You have to feel it out for yourself, what works for you, and also be aware that how many crisps I eat on Monday could be very different from how many I eat on Thursday, depending on hundreds of factors.
So if they want the box to say that it's 150 calories per serving, but the serving is 9 chips.
Who eats 9 chips?
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I eat the box of chips, which I know is the wrong end of the spectrum, but I do feel better about that.
Yeah, no, it's not about that. It's all about kind of like how you get full. So there are 2 kinds of fullness. And in order for you to feel trusting in yourself and like understand what your body's saying, you need them to match. So there's volume fullness and there's satiation fullness, and they feel different. Volume fullness is what people do when they diet. So I like to call it like volume hacking. Like pretend you had a giant bowl of lettuce, right? You ate this huge bowl of lettuce. You would end with your stomach physically stretched because it's taking up a lot of space, but it doesn't feel right because like you didn't have nutrients. It's just lettuce. Like it's not satiating. So there's that volume fullness, which is like my stomach is stretched. I can tell I'm full. And then there's satiation fullness, which comes more from nutrient density of mostly fats and proteins. And there's receptors in your stomach that let you know when you've hit that ratio. So while you're eating, if you eat slowly, which is vitally important, by the way, you don't want to be eating quickly because it's very difficult to sense these things as they're happening. If you're eating slowly, there will get to a point where you're like, I'm filling up, I'm kind of full. I could eat more, but I don't think it would feel physically good in my body, so I'm going to practice stopping here. And that's when that volume and satiation are more matched, which is why volume hacking and eating a lot of low-calorie foods leads to absolute madness in your mental and physical state.
That makes sense.
On the pacing note, too, and it is the case, and this is also really important, it is the case that when someone eats in a window of 25 to 30 minutes, that they actually emit higher quantities of the satiation hormones, GLP-1 and PYY. Those two hormones are double in concentration, in fact, comparatively to someone who eats maybe in a shorter time window, such as 5 minutes. And so, when people really have a hard time gauging fullness, well, it's because they're just eating too fast. You eat within 5 minutes, your body has no time to, one, recognize that it's gotten in protein or fat, and two, release the hunger hormone, the satiation hormones that is required to communicate fullness to our brains.
Absolutely. It's a tough thing too, because it's mostly learned. I'm hearing you on one of the different podcasts saying like eating quickly because you had a very large family. That's like an innate thing that we learn. So a lot of us have that. And I remember I used to struggle with this a lot, like eating really quickly. And I found that when I ate slower, I actually had significantly less acid reflux and my GI system improved a lot, which is one thing, but also it was easier to tell when I'm full. So what I tell people is, I want you to practice slowing down. And the way we do this is we take a bite, we put down said utensil or food down out of your hand. I saw your eyes. You have to put it down. Then you chew it and swallow it before you pick it back up. This will be very annoying. This will be very challenging. You will forget many times.
I will drink a lot of wine.
Yeah.
I would wait.
Yeah. You get used to it though. At first it's annoying. It is. I never tell people like you're going to have fun doing this at first. Eventually you will. And eventually it becomes second nature. And once you do that, you don't have to think about it anymore. It's much easier for your body to just be like, well, I'm full. Oh, okay, whatever, I'm full. And it's easy. So you want to practice putting the utensil down between bites, but don't get critical of yourself when you forget, because you will forget many times until it's a habit.
Sure. So I like this, and you've said a couple things about experimenting. So what would the audience maybe give us a couple experiments that the audience could do? The audience could do, based on the fact that they do all the things that I said that they do.
Well, I mean, all the things you're saying, they're very normal things to do, right? Like, they're not crazy. They're normal things.
MJ's like, I have a friend who struggles with overeating.
There's a friend that likes ice cream a lot now.
Who doesn't like ice cream a lot? We're humans. Of course we like ice cream a lot, right? It's like a small portion of ice cream feels good in your body. A large portion just doesn't feel good. And you deserve to feel good, right? So it always comes down to, I deserve to feel good. What portion is going to make me feel good? But in terms of experiments, so we have hunger experiments and we have fullness experiments. Hunger experiments can be challenging for people in the dieting mindset because it involves you eating outside of times that you feel comfortable eating or outside of parameters that you've set for yourself. So it might look like this. Maybe I have somebody who eats breakfast and eats lunch, but by the time they get to lunch, they're really hungry and they're refusing to eat a snack in the middle, even though there's a 6-hour gap. And I keep saying, let's put a snack there. So a hunger experiment might look like, all right, say it's 3 hours after breakfast and you're feeling dizzy and tired. You have to eat something. And then you have to assess how it made you feel. And then that's how you can tell if it was hunger or not. For fullness, it's kind of more of is this physical fullness or an emotional eating instance? And that would be like maybe after dinner, we're still craving something. I usually have people implement what I call the 15-minute rule. And this is kind of to help with people who are still eating quickly. Whereas if you finish a meal and you still feel hungry, or not necessarily you still feel hungry, if you're unsure if you're full, which honestly, being unsure if you're full is super common. That's super normal, not being able to tell for sure, especially when the food in front of you is really good. So what I have people do is like, okay, let's wait 15 minutes. Let's do something else. Give time for those hormones to kind of make their way into your body. And after 15 minutes, if you are still feeling the urge to eat. Give yourself permission. If you're not still feeling hungry, which often is the case because you're now distracted and the hormones have come into play, oh, well, you weren't hungry. Now we know that what that was. So you kind of have to be open to moving a little bit outside of your comfort zone of how you would normally eat in order to implement the experiments, which is why, that's one of the main things I do is I help cheerlead people through their experiments.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Yeah, I think if you are under the impression that you overeat, then you probably should start with smaller portions and separate that out. Have a smaller dinner bowl or something and work with that, and then do exactly what Alysha's saying, like eat slowly, eat mindfully, enjoy the meal. And if you still feel at the end of that 15 minutes with that smaller portion that you need more, then go up and get more. You're allowed to get more. But it is a great point that it's kind of hard to tell if you're actually appropriately full. 9, 10, fullness scale, like you're very full, that slaps you in the face too. And this is where a lot of people just are so accustomed to eating so much that, oh, I'm full when I feel that like pressure sensation very overtly, but you're kind of already beyond fullness at that point. You've already overeaten because you did that in 15 minutes and you hadn't even allowed hormonal hunger to catch up. So you've already overeaten at that point. So a good experiment is starting with the smaller portion. It might seem like a really small portion to you based on how you typically eat, but then just feel it out afterwards. You're allowed to go up and get more. That's okay. It just is really hard when you have food in front of you that's, already in a large portion, for you to expect that, your brain is going to, cooperate with this very pleasurable, kind of tasty, satisfying thing in front of you. It's, we were talking earlier, and I think the idea of this, like, that kind of like sadness that happens after something very tasty is very real, and portion size can be avoidance of that. You don't want to feel the sadness, the little dump that comes after, that emotional kind of piece that comes after eating the last bite of ice cream. So you get a large to like postpone it, but you're still going to feel that feeling anyways. And so you might as well do the thing that, like, one is most self-serving to you and nourishes you appropriately.
Yeah, I always like to say too that like your eating experience is going to last the next couple hours. So let's say we do choose this much larger meal, and in the moment it was pleasurable and enjoyable to eat. But like, if we're going to go do something fun after dinner, we're not going to have as much fun if we're uncomfortable. You don't deserve to be uncomfortable. You deserve to be comfortable. And that's really what it comes down to. It's just reminding yourself, like, I deserve to be comfortable. Yeah, this food's good. And a good way to help remind yourself that, like, you don't have to eat it all right now is that it's a scarcity mindset is what causes this. Like, oh, this is mine. I have it now. Like, this is all I get. But you have to remind yourself, even if you don't intend to, I can eat more of this later. I can eat more of this tomorrow. And reinforcing that mental idea that you can have it later or tomorrow, it relieves the anxiety of kind of eating in a compulsive way. And it allows you to be like, I can stop because this isn't scarce. This isn't limited. I'm allowed to eat more when I want to. That's very important.
I think that's well said. Let's talk about sugar.
Okay.
Because that's I think a big hang up for a lot of people. Those people out there.
those friends of mine.
The people.
Those people that I am asking questions for. But let's talk about sugar. And, what is it? Why does it make us feel a certain way? Like, why does it feel like you can talk about fats and carbs and proteins and lettuce and chicken and ribs and all the good food, but for some reason sugar seems to be in this like own category for people out there?
Sugar is it has a little bit more of that. It's not addictive, but it has a little bit more of that. Like, I want more of that. Like, I don't know for sure, but I feel like it releases more dopamine. I know carbohydrates do. So sugar releases more dopamine. So it's a little bit more like, ooh, I want some of that. It's all about moderation though. If you remove sugar, like long term, you are setting yourself up for one day where you go out and eat all the sugar and feel absolutely terrible. So it's all about, again, like, I don't deserve to be uncomfortable. So like, what happens if you eat a couple gummies? That's fine. If you eat a whole bag of gummies, you're going to be nauseous. You're going to feel bad, So it's kind of like reminding yourself that it has a little bit more of a pull to it, but you want to always be assessing, how did this food I just ate make me feel, and put that into this mental database that you have. All right, when I eat large amounts of sugar, I tend to feel nauseous. That happens to me. I mean, I know that I've had other clients report that too, or kind of have like that weird headachy type of feeling if you eat too much sugar. And like, we want to eat in a way that's not going to leave us feeling bad after. And I know I keep saying that, and I know that some people are like, well, but I'm just going to do it anyway. I'm like, but you can practice these things, and you won't just do it anyway over time.
Yeah, and I want to urge this too, is that the balance is really important, because when you abstain from something, you call it bad, you call it, I'm just not doing this, I'm restricting this, however you want to phrase it. What you're doing then, the underlying mental infrastructure is, well, that is just so good, I can't control myself around that. I have no self-control around this. And we talk about, like, these more esoteric ideas of like manifesting, but those have basic neurological foundations as well. And so what you're really saying is you're stressing to your system, hey, this is super, super pleasurable, and I don't even know if I can. I don't even know if I can control that. And then guess what? The next time that you do have sugar, because you can't always avoid it because it's prevalent. It's
We're in
it's a
America.
it's a nutrient. It's not a bad thing. It just is there. It's part of our culture. And so it's something that has to be accepted rather than controlled. And the more that you say, ooh, this is so good, this is so good, this is so good, you tell this in your mind, even if it's not a conscious thought, it's happening. And then you go and have this sugar. Well, guess what? Guess who has the biggest dopamine response of all? You do, not the person who is so adjusted to having that and practicing the skill of managing and balance. Not that person, the person who's abstained for however many weeks or months or whatever it's been.
That makes good sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned one thing, and I have a kind of an interesting question.
Yeah.
So we talk about emotions signal something oftentimes, and emotions can become dysregulated. And I guess that would be when we're getting emotions that are maybe signaling something to us that isn't necessarily true. But when I think about guilt as an emotion, what does guilt typically signal? And my answer to that would be, well, it kind of urges you to challenge some ethical behavior. So you feel guilty when you've done something wrong. Is that fair to say? Am I fair to say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Something you consider wrong.
yeah. Well, you or maybe your family or your culture potentially, right? So why is it that food has us feeling guilty? Because is food a moral thing? How are you wrong with food? How has that risen to the level of feeling guilty when we have cake or ice cream or this or that or overeat or whatever it might be? Why is it that we feel sometimes guilt there when I don't know if food should be an ethical thing?
Well, that would be diet culture, right? So that's why diet culture is so interwoven into these conversations, because it kind of puts this essence that like the food choices that you make determine like your strength, or your goodness in some way. And people will tell me all the time, like, oh, I ate that, I feel guilty. I'm like, why? Did you murder? Like, what did you do? Like, I mean, like, did you do something actually bad? Like, you ate a cookie, like you were at a party, like there's nothing wrong with that. But these messages are so internalized from the culture that we live in that we get these intense feelings of guilt. So what I have clients do is I have them label it as inappropriate guilt. I'm going to say, it is your default response to feel guilty in these situations. That's how it is right now. So when you eat something and you feel that feeling of guilt pop up, first of all, I want you to recognize what that pattern is in your body, so you know that's what that is. And then I want you to label it as inappropriate guilt. So what that means is they will still feel the guilt, but then they can start mentally changing their connection to it, reminding themselves that it's popping up inappropriately, connected to values related to diet culture and not reality. And over time, if they continue to label inappropriate, all of a sudden the guilt stops. So you have to connect it each time, and that's how you pull it out of your default response.
Really well said. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely guilty of that. I know that I do that, and I know it sounds like a lot of people do.
Most people do. Because I see people who don't have eating disorders, and they will tell me all the time, like, oh, I know that's bad. I'm like, it's not bad. Like when people are telling me things about, they will preface it with it was bad before they did it. And I'm like, that's not bad. Like, you can't do something bad with your eating. You can eat in a way that makes you not feel good, but you're not actively doing something bad that you should feel guilty about.
You'd be very surprised. Obviously, Alysha, you wouldn't be, but you would be very surprised the amount of shame brought into 90% of our sessions. We're talking about food, and on surface level, you think, why is that so emotional? Well, exactly. Why is it so emotional? But ask yourself some of these questions, and then face those feelings of guilt and shame yourself, or whatever kind of negative self-talk that kind of branches off of these emotions, and recognize that, yeah, these are vulnerable topics, and well said to kind of like label that guilt as, yeah, maybe this isn't exactly telling me maybe this isn't exactly right on my ethical, kind of behavior. It's not a great comment on my ethical behavior. And perhaps then I start to develop my own, food and movement philosophy, my own food culture, because the one that we're shrouded in, it doesn't even work. Like, what's the point of what's the point of this diety kind of culture when it's not doing anything for us? It's been around for decades and
Hundreds of years.
yeah, and it doesn't actually serve us. We're not healthier. We're not happier. We don't eat better. We don't take care of ourselves better. So, if you think that this has, any consideration on health, then you'd be mistaken. And so therefore probably creating your own value system and what is important to you. And this is exactly kind of what Alysha and I and, our team do often is help people create their own value system that works for them, that actually serves them and they feel better and are healthier. And quite frankly, I just have better habits in general, right? It's like, yeah, we talk about these things and it makes sense. Like, oh, they say you can eat, second portions, third portions. Well, yeah, you can, but you won't because you actually, you honor everything that you're feeling. And I think that's very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if any, like, there's a really good book on diet culture called Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison. Amazing book that really goes into the origins of diet culture and how it's affected us at such deep levels, and highly, highly recommended read.
So I got a lot out of today. I'm sure the people that I was asking the questions for got a lot out of today. Got a lot out of today too. But I think if I could recap just a couple pieces that I took away, there's no wrong way to do this. And by taking the time to, what I got out of today is that you deserve to feel good.
Yes.
And recognizing that when you do the things that actually don't make you feel good, like the next hour when you're overly full, or the previous 4 hours when you haven't eaten because you're, trying not to for some reason and you're not really feeling good, that there's experiments that you can do. There's ways to figure out how to feel good throughout the entire day. And I think that's a huge piece for me. Not that I don't feel good throughout most of the day, but I'm aware that there are times when I don't feel my best. Like I'm lethargic or not focused, or I'm overly full, or I felt the guilt of eating the whole ice cream. But there are certain things that you can do, and there are people out there like you guys that you can talk to that will help you with that. But for me, the number one thing I took away from today is that you do deserve to feel good.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I appreciate that.
I'm glad that's the thing you took away the most, because that's the most important piece. Like, when you really believe that, you will make decisions in your best interest.
Yeah.
Right? Just naturally. It happens naturally. It's a learning process. These things take a bit of time. So I always say, be curious, not judgmental. Whatever pops up, if let's say you do overeat, you go, why did that happen? And you play detective and you figure out, and then you formulate a new experiment for yourself. But if you go, I can't believe I did that, rah, 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 you get nothing positive out of that. So being curious and just kind of playing around with what works best for you, and reminding yourself that the only person who knows how much food you need is you. I don't know. I can help guide you in interpreting your signals, but you're the only person who knows. So we want to build that trust.
Great. Yeah, well said. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. I really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, and if you want to catch more of our episodes, we're on Spotify, going to be on YouTube. We're on a lot of podcast platforms, actually. So, yeah, please follow, please subscribe, all that kind of stuff.
And definitely check out Nurtured Nutrition. NurturedNutrition.com?
NurturedNutritionRD.com.
NurturedNutritionRD.com.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and please, subscribe, drop us a follow, comment, and we'll catch you next time.